Hey, Mark, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Mark, how did you get down the path of writing your book?
Sticky notes. 33 years of sticky notes, and a few people along the way saying, you should really write a book. So being in HR, you get a little bit of a behind the scenes peek to what goes on in the business. Deal with the people issues. They are often um, unvarnished, serious, etc. And you get some really, really interesting, cool stories and experiences that you go, well, I thought I heard of everything and I thought I saw everything. And now I'm positive I'll never have seen and heard everything. And so putting together these stories, these experiences, these sticky notes over the years and people encouraging me, it turned into, well, go do it. I mean, if you're going to do it, and which I intended to, so go do it. So it's kind of the culmination of not necessarily life, it's sprinkled in there, but mostly professional business experiences and the underlying theme that I've seen and felt, and I think is a train wreck in business, is a lack of trust and discounting employees' motivations and thinking they are opportunists and not leading people the way they want to be led. So I think it was a driver, and I firmly believe every single person wants to do a good job. Nobody shows up any day of the week on how crappy can I be today at my job? How many people can I upset? How many orders can I get wrong, et cetera, et cetera? Yet the corporate minds are leading on data sets. They're leading on metrics. They're leading on process, not people. And yet out of the other side of their mouth, they'll say people are their most important thing and we're no good without our people and our people are a differentiator, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of what got me going. And that's kind of what put the ammunition in the gun to go, like, it's 33 years of seeing this stuff. Is I think we're off. I think we're off.
You bring up some really good points, and I agree with you. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and goes, "How many things can I screw up today?" Nobody wakes up doing that. However, that kind of seems to be the appearance sometimes. So you brought up a really good point with a lack of trust and thinking that people are opportunists. So what do you think drives that? Because I think inherently leaders want people to show up to work and do their best, and they know it. But then the events happen. So what causes that disconnect with trust?
Well, one thing I'm going to put in a box off to the side and not even touch at the moment is profits and money and the drivers for those things. So we all know that exists to some degree, less or more. There's this evil corporation concept, which I don't think is not really true in a widespread basis. But I do think that has some influence. So when you manage process instead of people, you're looking at numbers and spreadsheets and things like that. So I think that's a driver. So when somebody goes slightly off the reservation and maybe their performance, their attitude, whatever factor is off base, there's this baby with the bathwater, throw the baby out with the bathwater mentality. It's like, listen, I'll just replace you. I don't need the headache, etc., without the thought of the effort or the work to get that done. So I think that there's an over reliance on rewarding numbers instead of results that include people metrics. And I think leaders are also stuck in the middle between, I want to give you, the employee who's struggling, having a hard time for whatever reason, some kind of quarter and some kind of release and some kind of time for you to get that fixed. And I want to talk to you about it. But then I got the ivory tower people pushing me to turn in the numbers, and then so I only have so much patience for you. So I think those are some core underlying issues about how we got here.
I love the title of your book, Never Fire Anybody. And so when I first saw it, I was like, well, maybe not quite. And then I was like, I know you don't really mean that. And then, of course, there's going to be some people, but you bring up some interesting parallels to what I've experienced in the military. So can we just talk a little bit about that and why you believe what you believe?
Sure. So again, if we can get on the same page that people want to be successful, nobody wants to screw up, right? They want to show up, they want to do a good job. So they show up with that mindset, and sometimes they can't meet the bar for a variety of reasons. So sometimes people are over promoted. So they're out beyond their skis. They're put into a role that they're not technically qualified for. It's next person up, and oh, you've been here the longest, you probably should be the right person, etc. And then we see potential falling down in that promotional role. And again, the predisposition is to remove, get rid of the dead weight, fire fast, etc., etc. Well, you kind of should hold up a mirror. The worst person you could fool in the world is yourself. You as the leader put yourself in that situation by promoting somebody more than they can handle. It's 90. So 90% of what they bring every day is valuable. Realign their role. So if you gave them the promotional money, you think about whether you take it away or not. I think you do. I think businesses are for profit, reasonable profit. We can't be greedy, but reasonable profit. You're not there. You're not a charity. So if you are not contributing XYZ value for your role, I've got to repurpose you to a level of pay and a level of position, A, that you could be successful, and B, that generates value for the company. I think that's the last stage of never fire anyone. So it truly isn't never fire anybody. It's really a values-based disciplinary model that realigns people to where they can be successful and generate value for them.
So in your experience, that sounds pretty simple, but I assume simple things are hard. In your experience, how do we get people to adopt this model?
Well, first 25 years of my HR practice was W-2 behind the desk. So I'm kind of beholden to a larger culture, process, bosses, etc. Now, in the last 8 years or so, running my own practice, I'm still beholden to that from a client perspective, but I have a unique position to kind of put a little wedge in there and get them to think differently. And I think the most significant way that we can bring about this change of mindset is to focus on the value of the person that they have. So let's just say there's 5 jobs in a promotional tier. They're in the fourth next to highest job. You've promoted them, they're not successful, etc. Well, they could really kick ass at 3 and 2 and 1. So why would you want to do a PIP and an arduous improvement plan or a write-up, et cetera, and things like that, and turn the culture and the environment between you and your hardworking employee who wants to do well sour when you go, listen, I need to be straight with you. This is no surprise. You know you're not doing well. We've had several talks. This isn't out of the blue. You feel it. I can see it in you. You know you're not doing well. Nobody's surprised by having this tough talk. I can't keep you where you are. And I want to put you where you're going to do well. And that means X for pay and Y for title and Z for duties. And I think if we can manage up to the leaders and owners of organizations and go, why wouldn't you take 70 or 80%, 90% of the person that's valuable, keep them, repurpose them, be honest about it, and find somebody for the level 4 job they were in that you really need. And let's retain that tribal knowledge, that technical expertise, that customer affinity and relationships that exist. Why would you not invest the time into repurposing instead of replacing?
It brings up some very good points about there's a generational gap right now where, I think the younger folks are coming in and they expect a lot of pay and the work level doesn't really match that. And the performance also doesn't match that because they don't like they lack the experience that goes along with the pay and the positions. And so when we talk about being values driven and people driven and putting them where they belong, how hard is that for organizations to really go, you know what? It's easier to move somebody down or repurpose them somewhere else and still keep the value that they bring than to just fire and replace.
Well, I think in that respect, you're absolutely right about the generational difference. I had a client who had an employee approach him and say, I really need a promotion and more money to be able to do more. And it was that generational disconnect that the older generations feel like, and this is truly the right way it should be done. It's just a disconnect now. You show me you can do it. You do it for a little while, and then I see you've earned it, and then I promote you, so I know I've made the right decision. I don't stick my neck out, give the promotion and the pay on a promise and a wish, and then maybe you can't do it, and then we're in that repurpose state. So I think you're 100% spot on that there are generational differences, and I think it is just that candid, blunt conversation to go, listen, Susie, I appreciate it. I think you can do it. I just think your order of operations are a little reversed. I can't, I don't know that you can do it, but I believe in you. So I have full trust in you, support you whatsoever, et cetera. But why don't we try a little bit of this new rollout or some cross training or go to that department or work that role 1 day a week, 2 days a week, et cetera, get a mentor, shadow somebody, et cetera. Why don't we try it on? Because also, I think, Susie, you don't really know what the entire role entails. And you're potentially focusing on all the highlights, but maybe the lowlights or the things that you don't know, the surprise things when you kick over rocks in a job, you're like, oh, you know what? Time out. I don't want this. And I can't have an organization operate with we're not a trial system, a trial and error system. I believe you can do it. Then I've got to know you can do it. Let's find out if you can really do it together. So I think that's just the tilt the cube and the angle of approach a little bit differently and educate them to go, I believe you, but we need to know, not just guess.
Do you think that we should be putting people into positions based off of potential or based on performance demonstrating potential?
Well, potential, the first part, potential, is wholly unknown. It's a guess, it's a question mark. It's, let's make a deal. You want curtain number one or what's in this box over here? You don't know either outcome. So it should be potential based upon performance. I don't think anybody should be advanced on any meritless basis. So they have to at least be competent in their role, show that they've got growth potential, but then the behavior and the attitude side has to come along as, I mean, you have to be aligned to our organization. You have to support what we do. And you can't be a naysayer or negative, but be the best technical person and think you're not going to hit a wall one day. You're going to hit a wall one day, as you should, because it's okay if you don't like what we do or what we stand for, but are you really for here then? Or you got to understand your opportunities here are limited.
It's a great point because there's a lot of talk right now about merit-based promotions, potential-based promotions, and then there's several talks that at the executive level, people interview well, they show up, but they can't perform. What do we do with those people where they look great on paper, they sound great when you interview them, they talk to them, and the references check out, and they show up, and then their performance is like it's less than par.
I would argue that the interview process wasn't thorough enough. And I would propose that the higher up the chain of command and the more senior a role, the more critical it is to put them in little ecosystems and test beds and trial environments. They're organizations that will vet somebody in a simulation of what you do in your organization, and they will workshop you, they'll do intake, and they'll model it, and they will put these potential people through real life scenarios. All you have to take is your most challenging business situations that you've had in the last 18 to 24 months. You box them up in an exercise, you role play the exercise, and the person literally sits down. They have a phone to answer, they have emails to answer. This issue is given to them in a simulation. And I think, quite frankly, that is more critical the higher up you go, because the risk is higher for failure.
And I'm glad you brought those points up because the argument is real out there right now. We're like, well, we interviewed them, we did this, we did this, they showed up and they're not performing. Like, I don't understand.
You have to take that extra step. I mean, you do. I need to know if I'm hiring a director, a vice president, executive vice president, CFO, officer, whatever it is, and they have such clout, influence, and control. They need not only all the behavioral assessments to understand you're not going to come in and flip my culture on its head, because we love our culture. This is who we are. You're not messing me up. So I need to make sure you're aligned to my organization. But then I also need to make sure that you're not going to fall on your face in the actual accomplishment of the job. And I think the organizations fall short by not doing these simulations.
That's a great point. And so when we talk about the simulations, we talked about the generational gaps. So when is the right time to let somebody know, like, hey, we brought you on board, or you were the next man up, and let's use the next man up scenario. Like, we had nobody else. You've been here the longest. We want to promote within our ranks. You seem like you'll do a good job, but you're not just like working out. When is that right time? Or is there a better time than others to be like, hey, maybe we need to repurpose you?
I think the first time the leader feels doubt is the first time you have to have a conversation. Not a movement, not a change, not a repurposing at that moment, but you can't sit on it, because what happens far, far too frequently, almost all the time, is the supervisor want to look the other way. They don't want to deal with poor performance. Then all of a sudden it's a pile on. So it's this big surprise. In the last 6 months, here are all your screw ups. Why didn't you talk to me 6 months ago? Like, why didn't you help me get this? And I've seen people turn it around after the pile on that they could have just turned it around a lot sooner. So I think stage one is as soon as doubt creeps in your mind, you have to have a sit down. You have to be honest. You have to ask them, how do you feel about how you're doing? Don't even introduce doubt, because then you'll introduce doubt in them, and you want your leader to believe in you. So just, hey, how do you think it's going so far in the first 30 days? Get a vibe. If there's kind of simpatico that they don't feel so great about it either, that's just an easier platform to start the conversation. And so at that early stage, you put a couple milestones and waypoints in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Hey, listen, we're kind of on the same page. You're not feeling 100% on this. I'm not feeling 100% on this. It's good that we both are aligned. It's around a negative thing. We both lack some confidence in what you're doing, but let's see if we can't fix that by doing these things in the next 30, 60, 90. And then at the next 30-day waypoint in 60 and 90, if it's still unsuccessful, you just increase the level of conversation to the point where then repurposing is on the.
I think that initial conversation, though, for some people may be difficult to have, because I've heard several times from folks, well, they knew, I knew, how could they not know, right?
Email documentation. Well, they know, they absolutely know. I told them, and you sit them down and go, first I've ever heard of this.
Perfect, spot on, exactly where I'm going with that. So absolutely. The question is how do you make sure that you just tackle that hard, difficult situation and have that
You got to
conversation?
manage the supervisor. So for example, generally nobody's in a bubble about poor performance, right? So no news is good news. And then when you hear news, you often hear news that something's going sideways. So more people know about it. So it's not a surprise. Except how could it be a surprise to the person who's going sideways? So you have to look at the supervisor and go, listen, you need to have a conversation with them. You need to be straight with them. I'm holding you accountable for your department's performance. I'm holding you accountable for building trust and empathy and an army of people that's going to run through brick walls for you. And if you don't tell them when they're messing up, they won't know. I had a great example. I had a regional manager and a district manager. Regional manager was technically superstar. Paperwork was atrocious. Errors, misspellings, etc. And the regional manager came to me, or the district manager came to me, the higher one, the district manager, and said, I'm having a problem with so-and-so. I think it's a literacy issue. Come to find out, didn't know how to read. And I said, listen, Chris, you've got to talk to him. I said, if you are a true leader and if you're a friend to him, friends have to have the hard talks too. Everything can't be champagne and roses. When things stink, you got to address the stink. And so they had a talk. They literally cried it out. He enrolled in English as a second language sessions through the library system, was in the Manhattan area. So in the 5 boroughs, they run the literacy programs through the library system. Couldn't have been a better result. Couldn't have been a stronger relationship. And those two will be the best and the strongest and be able to have hard chats for the rest of their lives, work or personally.
That's a great story that you shared with folks, because I know there's a lot of people out there listening and watching this, and they're put in leadership positions. Maybe it's their first time in a leadership position. It's like, I just don't know how to
They're
have
terrified.
that.
Terrified.
It's awkward, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's so, and then you're like, well, if I have this conversation, how is that person going to react? And am I going to tank their performance even more? Or is there going to be an improvement? And I think you hit it spot on. I love the fact that you bring it on having that early and often, and then get that feedback from them as well. Like check in, like, hey, how do you feel like your performance is doing? I think that's a great technique as well.
Well, and part of what I do in my business on some of the executive coaching assignments is that first question. And it's magic. So ask the person, so how do you think it's going so far in your new role? Then you get a sense of where they fit and see things. There's going to be unlikely identical overlap and lineup, but probably a lot. And that will make the conversation easier, because you're going to start on the things that you both see the same way. So there's no conflict, there's no disagreement. The only time that terror essentially remains during that conversation is if the person responds, I'm kicking butt, I'm a superstar, this new job is great. And you're going, my Lord, how do I do this? And then, of course, you should have prepped role play with a consultant or an HR person or a friend, your wife, your husband, whatever. Like, what if he thinks he's a superstar and I'm having this conversation about some concerns? So you should have a couple bullets to kind of just test the waters and enter and see how they react. But that's the only time the terror should remain, is if you are juxtaposed on how that person's doing. Unlikely, in which case then you land on the same points and begin that tough conversation where you were already on the same page. It makes it easier.
And I love how you're human focused on this, because you mentioned earlier and you said we were going to put it aside, profits and money kind of drive how things go. And so, speaking of the profits and money, how is retaining somebody and keeping that value cheaper than or more cost effective than hiring somebody new? Or is it?
Well, it is. I don't have percent quotes or cost to replace quotes readily available, tip of my tongue, top of my head, etc. But it has been proven in multiple studies, and anybody can go Google this. It's, cost to retain versus replace is a real simple search. And it is multiples of returns when you can retain the knowledge that doesn't walk out the door, time to train, exiting somebody, the opportunity cost lost when you have that position vacant. Are you paying other people overtime to do the job? The job's got to get done. You have the job for a purpose, not for fun. So the work has to get completed in some way, shape, or form. And then oftentimes you hire somebody in at a higher rate because the market is such. Maybe the person's been there for a few years, and now you're hiring it at a higher cost, and that just layers it on. And so I think there's a very simple, straightforward, logical argument to be made for retention. And I guess the last way I would prove this point is, how do leaders and organizations feel when some of their most successful, accomplished, seasoned, experienced, technical people put in their retirement or their resignation? Oh my God, the bottom of the world just fell out. Why? Because we feel like we're losing all this stuff. So if you retain, you keep all this stuff, and you just need to manage the pieces of the stuff that aren't optimal.
So that goes back to a mindset shift, though, because if you feel like your top performers who have been there for a long time are getting ready to retire and you feel like the bottom's falling out, why don't people feel the same way when you have to remove somebody or you need to fire somebody or somebody wants to quit? That's not a top performer, but maybe they're average. How come we don't feel the same way?
Well, I would argue that they're not as integral, critical. There's not as much pain. I mean, let's face it, change is often driven about by the pain to stay where you are is greater than the pain to go. And so I think it's the reverse, where the pain to go by abandoning somebody who's 75% optimal in the role and not either coaching them towards 90% plus or repurposing them to a role where there could be 90% plus optimal should be the first position. And so I would argue that we don't feel that sense of urgency, or the bottom is dropping out, because they're not that good and they're not that integral, and maybe they're not that high up on the food chain to hurt as much. But that doesn't erase the loss and the extra cost to replace, and the lost opportunity time and all that. So those losses and that pain exists no matter who leaves at what level in the organization. Some are greater than others. It's like the lifeboat exercise that I do some training for folks. Like, I work with CEOs, and like your company name is XYZ. So you're the captain of SSXYZ. You're going down. You can only save one person to help you rebuild the company. Who is it? Why? And then you expand that circle. Okay, you can only save two people. You got room in your lifeboat for two people plus you. Who are the first two people you're taking? So there is a value, there is a rank order to what people bring to the organization. And it's not qualitative based upon the person or somebody's lesser or greater. It's their capability, the ability to rebuild what they provide to us differs. And that's just simply the way life is. It's a rank order of things. And if you had to rebuild the company, you would pick your best person, then your second best, and then your third, et cetera. So along the way, everybody brings value. And I think retaining that value is more beneficial and less costly than replacing.
I agree with you on this because I have to experience it on a daily basis. And, and I mean that with all sincerity. So in the military, especially in the Army, you can't just like fire people. You can move them from one job to the other, but they're not going anywhere, and they're not going anywhere fast. So it's either how do you develop them and get them to where they need to be, or can you reduce them to a level where they're going to perform adequately and still benefit the team and benefit the organization? And so it's great. It's a great tool and technique. And you are the first person to ever bring that up that I've talked to that's not in the military or associated with the military.
Very cool.
Hey, well, like,
Very
hey,
cool.
maybe we should just reduce people and to a level where they can provide and serve and still provide value to the organization. I was like, that's a great idea. How come I'm not hearing this from other people?
And it doesn't box you in forever. It doesn't mean that they're there forever. I've had development discussions with leaders where there's a single mom who doesn't have the time or capacity to take on a developmental assignment right now. And they turn around, they go, well, you don't want to grow with us now. Why would I care about you in 6 months or when your situation changes? Why would you not? Purposing them towards a level of success doesn't mean they're forever there. What was missing, or maybe another path in the organization is better. It's not a black mark. It's the optimal reassignment to everybody's best interest.
And that's a great point that you bring up with single moms or even family planning in general. There's certain levels of positions where
Newborn?
it's going to
Yeah.
require more time and effort than others and the performance that goes along with it. So absolutely great points. I do like to leave everybody with one thing that they can implement today to make their leadership style better or their organizations better. What is something that someone could take away from this conversation that we had and say, you know what? Maybe there's a couple folks that I need to have this conversation with. How can I start to implement this framework today besides reading your book?
I'm glad you went there because that's exactly what I was going to respond with, which is it is very, very simple. You have to have the hard conversation. Period. End of story. You have to, especially in your supervisor leadership role. That's what you're paid to do. You're paid to optimize your team and your department's results. And then as you go up larger and CEO for the whole organization, you have to have these talks. The terror behind having these talks is almost palpable for people. Some people flip out, sweats, tap in nervousness. Oh my God, I don't want to do this, rescheduling, etc. And so the two takeaways. You got to have it. You can't bury your head. Two, you need to open with finding common ground. So tell me, how do you think you're doing? Put it on them to get the response. Then you need to react to what they give you. And I think the terror will instantly go away when you find out that 9.5 times out of 10, there's some things they think are also wrong that you probably see are also wrong that you can then have some brass tacks conversation about. The only time the terror exists is if they're completely off base. They think they're a superstar. You're sitting them down to take their pulse to go, wow, I've got some concerns. In which case, then I would hope you'd have prepped and have a couple bullet points to some soft entries to kind of probe them for their reaction to see, let's just talk about maybe you're not that Michael Jordan in this job that you're talking about. I think you're doing okay, but I think there's some things that could be better. Let's talk about what they are. So that's what I would leave it. Have the conversation and ask them how you think you're doing so that you get their response and then you work off common ground, which then usually dispels the fear.
Great points. If my last question to you is there anything that I didn't ask you that you were like, you know what? I really wish you had asked me this question. And that's my last
Well,
question.
the only thing I would say we didn't touch on, we did the trust thing, which is the candid speech, et cetera. I think trust and the second core foundation of good leadership is the empathy. I have told people a million times, I don't need any federal or state leave law to give somebody who's for me, runs through brick walls, is a good performer, is the right attitude, etc. I don't need to give any law to tell me to give you time off to go be with your son who's sick, your wife who's sick, take care of your newborn, etc. I don't need that. I need to treat you like a human being. You need to know I'm in your corner. And like, I'm not a gold star, pizza on Fridays, perfect attendance, and a participation trophy. That's all nonsense. But when you are a high performer and you have something go south in your life, I want you to know I back you. Your job's here when you get back. I don't care what the FMLA says. I don't care what the state leave says, etc. I'll be compliant to it because I must, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop there. I want you to know I'm here for you. I want you here for me. And the empathy is just building a set of rock stars that know like they can show up with peace of mind and go, you know what, if something crappy happens in my life, they're going to be cool. I mean, that's the culture of this company. That's how my leader is. And that's how I can show up here 100% invested and engaged because I know this place cares about me and my leader cares about me.
So everyone listening to this and watching this, if you're in a leadership position, which a majority of you are, go back and re-listen to that segment. I think a lot of you need to re-listen to this because we need to bring people back to the forefront. And I love the points that you bring out. Like, you don't need a law to tell you to let people go take care of their family.
I do not.
Wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Absolutely. So thank you for
That's where I
bringing that
want
up.
them to be. I don't want them to be anywhere else. We will figure it out. We will survive. We'll be here when you get back.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you brought that up because we need more of that today, more so than ever. So thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
For everyone watching and listening to this, go in the descriptions. You'll get the link to Mark's book and all his social media stuff. So that way you can find him and his website. And so if you want to know more about this or know more about what he does, you'll be able to find it there. So, Mark, I really appreciate you being on the show and thanks for stopping by.
I'm extremely grateful. I was happy to be here. Thank you.